Okay, this is Armageddon, and there's a lot of short stories that we'll see come together at the end here. In Ecclesiastic it says, "The things that has been is that which shall be, and that which is done is which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun." So we'll see that Armageddon has already happened and will happen again, but first we're going to look at personalities who probably won't survive the battle. You will see the battle is over the commandments of God or the tradition of men. We will be looking at several short stories of what we should avoid and what we should embrace. So let's start going. Okay, so there we go. So God calls for a reformation, a revival and reformation. The words of the Bible should be heard from the pulpit. In many sermons today, there is not that divine manifestation which awakens the conscience and brings life to the soul. The hearers cannot say, "Did not our hearts burn within us while he talked with us by the way and while he opened to us the scriptures?" Let the words of God speak to the heart, and let those who have heard only tradition and human theories hear the voice of him who can renew the soul unto eternal life. So we're starting with the rich young ruler. So anyway, you're starting in Matthew 9:16. It says, "And behold, one came unto him and said, Good master, what good things shall I do that I may have eternal life? And Jesus said unto him, But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments." And that's a problem with most people. They don't want to do it. And he said unto which? And Jesus says, "Thou shalt do no murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, and thou shalt not bear false witness. Honor thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." The young man saith unto him, all these things have I kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? And that's where he made a mistake. But you'll notice he only gave 5 of the last 6 commandments. He didn't mention the first 4 because he was keeping those. And this is the way Jesus answered him. In verse 21, he says, "But if thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasures in heaven, and come and follow me." If thou wilt be perfect, Jesus didn't tell him to sell everything he had and become poor and live on the streets like the others. He just asked him to share in his abundance, but he was lacking 2 things. He was stingy with his goods, and he refused to follow Jesus. Okay, so in Psalms 19:7 says, "The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple." Then in Matthew 5:58 it says, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." So being perfect is keeping all of God's 10 commandments. So, but when the young man heard these sayings, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possession. So the young man was keeping all the commandments that he was comfortable with, but when confronted with the ones he was breaking, he went away sorrowful and refused to follow. So this chapter and the verses of Matthew 19:16 correspond with the year 1916, in the middle of World War I. This young man was battling over keeping his possessions or losing heaven. So he chose his possessions.
Roger, can I just interject? He's showing you a way to remember where it is, not that the incident, the story that happened wasn't during World War I.
No, these dates, I believe these are prophetic dates, because there's more of them coming.
Okay. So what happened in 1960?
That was the middle of World War I.
But that's a way to remember where that is, not that the story in the Bible happened.
Well, that's how I do it, yeah. Okay, another class of people refusing to follow Jesus. In John 16:51, it says, "I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world." And the Jews therefore strove among themselves, saying, How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Then Jesus said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. And but it says in Leviticus chapter 3, verse 17, it says, it shall be a perpetual statute for you, your generations throughout all your dwellings, that ye eat neither fat nor blood. But Jesus here is telling them to eat their blood, and they're probably taking it the wrong way, which a lot of people do when they read the scriptures. So in Deuteronomy 12:16 says, Only ye shall not eat the blood, ye shall pour it upon the earth. So in Deuteronomy 12 is part of the Levitical law in not drinking the blood of animals. Jesus didn't say anything about eating the blood of animals, and they didn't stick around long enough to see what he meant. So when you see these little red dots or little black dots, that means we're changing story. So in John 6:6, from the time many of his disciples went away and walked with him no more. This is the apostate verse, including those who hear and read something that they don't agree with. They just walk away. Now Jesus is going to demonstrate what he meant by eating his flesh and drinking his blood. It's in Mark 14:22. And as they did eat, Jesus took bread and blessed and brake it and gave it to them and says, Take, eat, this is my body. Well, Jesus was referring to the bread and the grape juice in the communion service as being his flesh and blood. Many churches do the communion service with wine laden with alcohol and leavened bread, and they refuse to do the foot washing, which we're about to look at. And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they drank it all. And he said unto them, This is the blood of my New Testament, which is shed for many. And Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things unto his hand, and that he was come from God, and he went to God. And he raises up from supper, and laid aside his garment, and took a towel, and girded himself. And after that he poured water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. Then came he to Simon Peter, and Peter saith unto him, Lord, thou dost not wash my feet. And Simon Peter says unto him, Lord, not my... Oh, I better go to verse 8. Thou shalt never wash my feet. And Jesus answered him, If I wash thee not, thou hast no part with me. And then Peter, like he usually is, Simon Peter saith unto him, Lord, not only my feet, but my hands and my head. So, and Jesus saith unto them, He that is washed or is baptized needeth not save to wash his feet only, but he is clean every whit. Thank you. And you are clean, but not all. For he knew who should betray him, therefore he says, Ye are not all clean. So after he had washed their feet, and had taken his garment, and was set down again, he said unto them, Know ye that I have done to you? Ye call me Master and Lord, and ye say, Well, for so I am. So if then your Lord and Master have washed your feet, you ought to wash one another's feet. And for I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. So, and over in 1 Peter 2:21, it says, For even hereto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that we should follow in his steps. So, following in Jesus' steps is doing the foot washing service that we usually do it every quarter. We can do it more often. So now we're going to look at what Sister White has said about those keeping the feast and the Passover. In 1 Corinthians 11, 23 to 25. To feel the pulse of conscience, in this ordinance Christ discharged his disciples from the cares and burdens of the ancient Jewish obligation in rites and ceremonies. These no longer possess any virtue, for type was meeting antitype in himself. The authority and foundation of all Jewish ordinances that point to him as the great and only efficacious offering for the sins of the world. This is 5 BC 1139. And 11, this is verse 5, here's verse 6. It says, to continue these rites would be an insult to Jehovah. So the last Passover our Lord observed with his disciples, he instituted the Lord's Supper in place of the Passover to be observed in the memory of his death. The last Passover here is the last Passover forever. Jesus charged the last Passover changed the last Passover over to the communion service, taking the unleavened bread and the wine, the unfermented grape juice, along with the foot washing service in John chapter 13, and Jesus offered his body and blood as a sacrificial lamb of God, and once and forever see Hebrews 7:27 and 9:28, thus ending the Passover forever. The national festival of the Jews was to pass over forever. The service which Christ established was to be observed by his followers in all lands throughout all ages. So when we come to the destruction of Jerusalem, it's followers of Jesus that heard the signs, that heeded the signs of Christ's coming, and the doom left, and they left for Pella, and it is nearby. It was nearly 1 million apostate Jews that were still keeping the Passover that died in the destruction. It's the communion service that is to last through all ages. Sorry for I'm just tired. So this is one about the Jewish leaders. Now what Jesus has to say about the Jewish leaders. Jesus cautioned us to beware of the Jewish leaders in a very commanding way. He says, but in John 11:54, Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews. What I can't understand is why anyone would want to take up a religion that God has rejected. So in Matthew 23:13, but woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For you neither go in yourself, neither suffer ye them that are entered to go in. And woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites, for ye compass the land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, you make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. Well, Jesus called them blind guides because of what they are teaching. And this here is, there are 4 verses in Daniel 9:24 to 27 that are so incriminating to the Jewish rabbis that they refuse to let their people study them. This is because it includes the prediction of the exact year in which Christ, the Messiah, would be baptized, and he begins his 3.5-year ministry on earth, and the exact year in which he would be put to death, because the official teaching of the Jews is that the Messiah had not yet come. So Jewish parents and children dare not study Daniel 9 or Isaiah chapter 53 because of the curse. They were teaching people not to read Daniel along with Isaiah. And here's the curse. So may the curse of heaven fall upon those who calculate the date of the advent of the Messiah and thus create political and social unrest among the people. So, may the bones of the hand and the bones of the fingers decay and decompose to him who turns the page of Daniel 9:24 to 27 to find out the time of Daniel, and may his memory rot from off the face of the earth.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What's this part about? Like,
this is the Jewish leaders.
Okay.
They actually don't want the people to study Isaiah and Daniel. Otherwise, they'll come to study this and realize that Jesus is the Messiah. So this is a curse
Oh,
that the Jewish leaders.
Yeah, it's not the people; it's the Jewish leaders. It's just like what the Catholic hierarchy. It doesn't. They're not talking. It's not talking about the people that love God.
Yeah.
Woe unto you, blind guides! Now the chief priests and elders and all the council sought false witness against Jesus to put him to death. They were breaking the ninth commandment and bearing false witness with the intention of breaking the sixth commandment to put Jesus to death. So, but found none, yea, though many false witnesses came, yet they found none. At the last, 2 false witnesses came. For many bear false witness against him, but their witnesses didn't agree. In Exodus 20, verse 16, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbors. So if you break one commandment, James 2:10 says, if you break one commandment, you break them all. So verse 17, you fools and blind, and certain men which came down from Judea taught the brethren and said, except ye be circumcised after the manner of Moses, you cannot be saved. So in Acts chapter 15 is after Christ's ascension to heaven. Circumcision is a part of the old covenant, along with some of the feast days and the Passover that was nailed to the cross. So, and when Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and disputation with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain others of them should go up to Jerusalem unto the apostles and elders about this question. So Acts 15 it explains quite a bit. And then in verse 5, and there rose up certain of the sect of the Pharisees which believed, saying that it was needful to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. And Galatians 5:3 says, for I testify again to every man that is circumcised that he is a debtor to the whole law. It's just like if you break one law, one of the 10 commandments, you break them all. But here, if you keep one of the laws of Moses, it says you're a debtor to the whole law.
which ones are the laws of Moses? I thought they were the 10 Commandments.
Oh, well, the 10 commandments is observed with it, because see, a lot of times the law of Moses, the ceremonial laws, were done through the Sabbath of the Lord, but they're in Leviticus chapter 23. It talks about the Sabbath to verse 1 through 4, and then from 5 through 27 gives the feast, and it says in verse 28 is besides the Sabbath of the Lord. So it's the Sabbath of the Lord is always performed regardless what's around it.
Where's the laws of Moses found?
First 5 books of the
Oh,
Bible.
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, actually, yeah.
Well, there's actually a verse in Deuteronomy, and in it actually says, take these words. It's Deuteronomy 31:26.
24 to 26.
31:26. Take this book of the law and put it in the side of the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, that it may be a witness against thee.
Yeah.
And this morning in Sabbath school, we read about Colossians, how it was all these things were against you. So the Sabbath isn't against us; it's made for us, right? So the Sabbath. So it's
So there's God's 10
It's a
commandments.
ceremonial Sabbath.
Thank you.
It says, now therefore, why tempt ye God to put a yoke upon the necks of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor we are able to bear?
He's giving all
So in 1 Corinthians 7:19, circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God.
so you don't get overruled.
So circumcision is of the old covenant, baptism is of the new covenant, 2 different covenants. Now this is where Jesus stands before Pilate, I think.
Are you serious? Sorry to butt in, but did you just say that the circumcision was the old covenant and baptism is the new covenant?
Yeah.
So then why are people still circumcising
Thank you.
their sons?
Absolutely.
They're doing it for health reasons, not
Yeah.
It's not a religious thing.
Not for religious reasons.
Okay, and what about the Jews? Do they do
They
that?
still do it.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
They have to because they believe they're still under the old law.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they to the
Yeah.
Messiah
Under
does
the
not
old
come.
covenant, circumcision was
But here it says it's
the Lord to follow his
I heard they don't do circumcisions unless you really request it these days.
No, no.
Mhm.
Well,
Where at the
well, it's
hospital?
really, it's actually
Yeah.
very,
You're
it's very controversial because in our study group we talk about how the feast days are actually connected to the sanctuary, so it's not really done away. But like the Passover, where they actually take a lamb and then they have it in their house and they actually kill and sacrifice it, like that is what's done away with. Like we don't kill a lamb anymore because Jesus is the Lamb of God,
Yeah.
right? So it's like even circumcision, like Jewish people, Muslim people, they still do it. And you know that foreskin, you know, if you want to cut it, if the parents are convicted to cut off the foreskin of their son.
But
But are there any that don't? I
But
don't know
just-
many that don't.
just so we can get back on track, see what else Roger has for us.
oh, well, this year is somehow or another that got in there where it shouldn't be. So we're going to be talking about something else here. So there's two groups of people were formed when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. Now I'm just going to hit the high spots and not going into a lot of detail here. It says, and many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did and believed on him. But some of them went their way to the Pharisees and told them what things Jesus had done. So now go to verse 53. Then from that day forth, they took counsel together to put Jesus to death. The hatred of the Jews toward Jesus is still with us today, and we'll show some of that a little later. Okay. So Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews. So this should be a warning to those wanting to revive the Jewish religion. So why are so many SDAs willing to do just the opposite of what Jesus did? So Jesus, oh, here we are. Jesus stands before Pilate, because I took some of this out. Okay. Jesus stands before Pilate. And Pilate saith unto them, what shall I do with Jesus, which is called Christ? And they all said unto him, let him be crucified. By Pilate not releasing Jesus, he was just as guilty of the Jewish priests that condemned him and the Roman soldiers that nailed him to the cross. And Pilate saith unto them, what shall I do with them, with Jesus? Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. In John 19:10, Pilate says in John 19:10, knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee, and I have power to release thee? So when Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. You see it to it. So washing his hands or even taking a bath or going swimming doesn't release him from what he said in John 19:10. Instead of taking charge of the mob, he says, you see to it. So now we're going to get into the destruction of Jerusalem. This is good. I like that picture. These are all the Roman soldiers in there. So after speaking of the end of the world, Jesus comes back to Jerusalem, the city then sitting in pride and arrogance, saying, I sit a queen and shall see no sorrow. As his prophetic eye rested upon Jerusalem, he sees that she was given up to destruction. The world will be given up to its doom. The scenes that transpired at the destruction of Jerusalem will be repeated at the great and terrible day of the Lord, but in a more fearful manner. And I believe we've already entered into that time. Now, I got this book. Now, when I was studying this, I needed some confirmation of what I was doing. And we went down to Portland, went into what's with it? Barnes and Noble's bookstore. And as I walked into the door, the Lord did this to me. And I looked at a distance and I could see a book. I didn't know what it was, but I walked right straight over to it. I picked it up and I opened it up to this page right here. Out of all those books, it's the first one I seen. It says, in the spring of 67, Vespasian advanced along the coast of Antioch to Ptolemais, where he awaited the arrival of his son Titus with the Legio 15th Polonarius from Alexander. Jerusalem, meanwhile, suffered a reign of terror. By the spring of AD 70, Vespasian's power was sufficiently secured for him to give his son Titus command of the foreign legion and the troops and the client king. So this is a 3-year period from the spring of 67 to the spring of AD 70 that the Jews suffered a reign in terror for 3 years. So the scenes that transpired at the destruction of Jerusalem will be repeated at the great and terrible day of the Lord, but in a more fearful manner. The apostate Jews that were still keeping the Passover, at the time of the Passover, the gates were opened to the cities, and when everyone was let in, the Roman soldiers closed the gate, and thus began the final 6-month siege of the city and its total destruction. Now, there's a lot of people keeping the feast days now, and the Passover, but they're not doing it like in the Old Testament.
So was this a safety area for them, or was this bringing them in and then it destroyed?
It was supposed to be a high feast, so the Passover was a very big event. You could miss other feasts, but this one, it was always recommended that you should attend.
It was like an annual.
But the son of Vespasian, which was Titus, was looking. He was looking. They knew, like the Roman leaders knew what the feasts were of the Jews, and because this was a high day, if they were going to attack, this was going to be it.
So that's
So
Jews that are in there.
So their goal was to destroy Jerusalem. So when it was time for Passover, they opened the gates, all the Jews came in, and then they closed it behind them, and they had them trapped. So
And
they
so they
could
laid a
destroy,
siege
not
on
only
them.
destroy the city, but the people.
So they wouldn't let them do any bartering. They could not get supplies. And so they were basically trying to starve them out.
I see.
But horrible things are done instead of starvation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd like to make a statement there, because we know a lot of people that are keeping the feast, and I love them just dearly. I know Justin is, and it's not speaking against anybody, because I'm learning something about the feast. I think the last 3 of them are still ahead of us, because see, we're in the Day of Atonement right now, for the anti-typical Day of Atonement for the last 170 years, and there's a lot to be learned, and I'm one of them. Need to,
Just understand them in principle.
yeah. So over 1 million of the Jews that were still keeping the Passover died in the siege. That should be a concern about keeping the Passover, especially when the destruction of Jerusalem is likened to the end of the world. Okay, so let's see. Shortly before the Passover, the Roman army reached the city. A long siege, punctuated by assaults and battering ram, ended. The Roman troops entered the sanctuary and the temple, and intentionally or not, destroyed it by fire. That was on approximately August 9th, 10th of 70. And the temple burned. This is by Augusta to Constantine by Robert Grant on page 36 to 37. And he died in 2014.
Who did? Robert Grant?
Robert Grant. He's the one that wrote the book that I got here. Christ gave his disciples a sign of the ruin to come on Jerusalem, and he told them how to escape. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then you'll know that the destruction thereof is nigh. And so when we see the Roman army, or the Rome taking over the world, we'll know that the destruction is coming to an end too.
Desolation and destruction is the same word.
What's that?
Desolation and destruction is the same word.
Yeah.
Desolation.
Desolation.
Nothing left.
That there's just going to be desolate, just like a desert. And then the destruction is going to come.
So destruction brings about desolation.
Yeah. So not one Christian who heeded the words of Jesus perished in the destruction of Jerusalem. Christ had given his disciples the warning, and all who believed his words watched for the promised sign. And when it came, they left the city for Pella, east of Jordan River. That's Fourth Spirit of Prophecy, page 32. So, according to Josephus, it was on the 10th day of February is when the reign of terror started, and the final destruction of Jerusalem lasted for 6 months. And in the meantime, Jerusalem suffered a reign for during the 3.5 years. It says, from the month of February, AD 67, about which Vespasian entered the war, to this very time, it was just 3.5 years. And this is the works of Josephus. Now, the works of Josephus comes in 2 different books. There's one with a blue cover and one with a brown cover. And you won't find this quote in the one with the blue cover. It's in the other one. This is what Jesus said to those who refused to hear him. In like Luke 19:42, saying, if thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemy shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round about, and keep thee on every side. And it shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. So like the rich young ruler in Matthew 19:16, corresponding with World War I, in 1916, struggling whether he should follow Jesus or hold onto his possessions, and he chose his possessions. But see, this is during World War II right here too, because I think God is using chapters and verses to explain as a parallel to what he's doing here. So so this is what happened to the Jews who refused to follow Jesus and persecute their children for becoming Christians. The Lord is with you, while he be with ye him, and if ye seek him, he will be found of you, but if ye forsake him, he will forsake you. And in John 27:25, then answered all the people and said, his blood be upon us and our children. And this has rang down through the centuries. Like even the war, the Middle East can't stand the Jews. And I think it's because of what they pronounced before they killed Jesus, that their blood still is upon them.
Yeah, now this is a curse on a people, not an individual. At any time, Jews are allowed to choose the Messiah and not be part of that curse.
Yeah.
So this is a condition. It's conditional, I should say. That it's not like God says, well, you're a certain people and you're all condemned. It's conditional about whether you choose the Messiah or not.
Yeah, you'll see who those Jews are here in just a minute. So over 300,000 of our troops died protecting our freedom, of which we are about to lose. Look how slim these men are, and that's about what we're going to look like before it's all over. These are the guys during the World War II. There's a German, and when I was in Germany, these workers looked just exactly the same. And these were a lot of the Jews that got slaughtered.
Very sad.
Now this is the fall of the Babylon. From here, we're going to see short clips of Belshazzar and the fall of Babylon, Lot and his 2 daughters, and the destruction of Moab, and all these are part of the Armageddon, starting with Belshazzar. In Daniel 5:1, Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the thousands. Well, Belshazzar was the son of a grandson of the king Nebuchadnezzar, who in verse 3 defiled the living God in his last hours, or defied the living God in his last hours by throwing a party. Now, verse 2. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the gold vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and the princes, his wives, and his concubines drank in them. And they drank wine and praised the God of gold and silver, brass, iron, and wood and stone. So the gold, silver, brass, and iron are the four metals parts of the image of Daniel chapter 2, of which gold represents Babylon, and the stone is what smashed the image on the foot. And in the same hour came forth a finger of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part that was written. So keep this in mind. The man's hand is the only part that was seen. Then was that part of his hand sent from him, and this was the writing. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, mene, tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God has numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Now, a side note here, it says mene twice in verse 25, but only once in the interpretation. And anytime you see a double word like this, it's, I'm going to get to that a little bit later. I thought it was just coming up. So, Tinkle, thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. Thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So God wrote a letter to Cyrus the Median 100 years before he was born, describing how he would overthrow Babylon. It's in Isaiah 45:1. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him. And I will loose the loins of king, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. So this is what Cyrus read from the scripture. Now this is coming from the Conflict and Courage, page 257. As the king saw the words foretelling more than 100 years before his birth the manner in which Babylon should be taken, as he read the message addressed to him by the ruler of the universe, his heart was profoundly moved, and he determined to fill his divinely appointed mission. He would let the Judean captives go free. He would help them restore the temple of Jehovah. In a written proclamation published throughout all his kingdom, Cyrus made known his desire to provide for the return of the Hebrews and for the rebuilding of the temple. In 44:27, thus saith to the deep, be dry, I will dry up the rivers. And this is how he's going to do it. In the unexpected entry of the army by the Persian conquerors in the heart of the Babylonian capital, by the way, the channels of the river, whose water had been turned aside, and through the inner gate that in careless security had been left open and unprotected. The Jews had abundant evidence of this literal fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy concerning the sudden overthrow of the oppressor. And this should have been to them an unmistakable sign that God was shaping the affairs of the nation in their behalf. The destruction came upon Babylon while the king and his lords were engaged in feasting and revelry. Cyrus and his army marched up the riverbed of the river Euphrates, for trenches had been dug and the river turned from its course, so that there was no obstruction in their entry of the city, provided the gates were open. Those in one part of the city were slain or captured before those in another part knew that the city was invaded. No alarm was sounded, no cry could be raised to warn the people that the forces of Cyrus were upon them. Signs of the Time, December 1890. So this is the destruction of Sodom. In Genesis 19:12, and the angels, said unto Lot, hast thou here any besides son-in-laws, and thy sons and thy daughters? And whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. This is where Lot and his two daughters were commanded by the two angels to leave Sodom and Gomorrah to a cave in the mountains. For we will destroy this place, because the city of them is waxen great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. The firstborn in 1931, and the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come unto us after the manner of the earth. So Lot and his 2 daughters escaped Sodom to a cave in the mountains, and this is what his daughters learned from the living in the wicked city. This is called incense. Come and let us make our fathers drink wine, and we will lie with him, that he may preserve seed of our father. So thus both daughters of Lot were with child with their father, and the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Benami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the days when the Son of Man is revealed. Now, when we was over there in Israel, we went into the place where they figured it was Sodom and Gomorrah, and there was sulfur balls in there about the size of a hardball, baseball, and it's and I don't know if there's any more out there. One guy in our group, he found one and took it with him. So in this is out of the book of Nehemiah. On that day they read in the book of Moses in the Deuteronomy 23:3 the audience of the people, and therein was found written, the Ammonites and the Moabites should not come into the congregation of the Lord forever. And when all the Moabites heard that the kings were come up to fight against them, they gathered all that were able to put on armor and upward and stood in the border. Okay. And they rose up early on the morrow morning. The sun shone upon the waters, and the Moabites saw the water on the other side as red as blood. And here's a picture of a red river somewhere over there. And they said, This is blood. The kings are surely slain, and they have smitten one another. Now, therefore, Moab to the spoil. And when the Moabs came to the camp of Israel, the Israelites rose up and smote the Moabites, so that they fled before them. So now we have the Battle of Armageddon. Okay, Armageddon is a Hebrew word, a name occurring only once in the Bible. In Old Testament history, the Valley of Megiddo was a place of many decisive battles because of the broad plain that stood before it. Deborah and Barak defeated Sisera and his Canaanite army there in Judges 4-6. Gideon defeated the Midianites and the Amalekites, Judges chapter 6. Saul and his army of Israel were defeated because of their failure to trust in God in 1 Samuel 31, 1-13. And Pharaoh Necho killed Josiah, king of Judah, in 2 Kings 23. So this final battle, many call it World War III, and it well may be, but I believe it's a battle that all of us will have to fight, not in an actual combat with guns and swords, but a spiritual battle, having to make decisions that will alter our lives forever, similar to the rich young ruler in Matthew chapter 19. At the end of time, there will only be 2 groups of people, the sheep and the goats, the wise and the foolish, the saved and the lost, and so on. No third party. So you're either going to be keeping the commandments of God or the commandments of Rome. So try and remember these locations. This is a, there we go. This relief here is right here. It's the same thing. Okay. This is the story of how it will happen. The experience of Elijah in 1 Kings 16:29 to 1 Kings 19 or to 2 Kings. No, 1 Kings 9 is a parallel of our experience from the Sunday law to the voice of God, using the spirit of prophecy as our guide. Malachi says, 44:5 says, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great day, dreadful day of the Lord." And when I read that, I thought, well, I'll go back and see what Elijah went through. And then it all came to me. It was upon Mount Carmel. So in 1 Kings 16:30, and Ahab the son of Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord above all that were before him. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the... Come on.
Roger, I have a question before you go on. It says the Valley of Megiddo at the base of Mount Carmel.
Yeah, it was down there, down below it. Mm-hmm. Ahab was a leader. Now here's church and state again, because Ahab was a leader of the church and the state, like the Catholic Church was during the Dark Ages. And this is what he did. He reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. Now Baal, an idol among the ancient Chaldean Syrians, representing the sun. The word signifies also Lord or commander, and the character of the idol was varied by different nations at different times. Thus Baal Berith is supposed to signify the Lord of the covenant, or Baal Peor, or rather Baal Phagor, the Lord of the dead. Psalms 106, Beelzebub, the god of the flies, Webster's Dictionary. In 2 Kings 12:18, whereupon the king Ahab took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and says unto them, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." This is a golden calf like the one that they made at Mount Sinai in Exodus 32. Now this is modern day Baal. In 2 Kings 12:28, whereupon the king Ahab took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." Now this is a modern day Baal, and I think this was held at the grove there in Northern California, among the big trees there.
Redwoods?
What's that?
The redwoods?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure if it's that far.
Yeah.
Could be.
Baal, an idol among the ancient Chaldeans, representing the sun, Beelzebub, the god of the flies. The altar of Baal and the priest of Baal, who sacrificed to the sun, moon, and stars. Review and Heralds. Okay, the day of the sun, Sunday, as a day devoted to the most vile of the heathen worship, for it was celebrated in connection with sun worship. This Sunday Sabbath has been accepted by many who know it to be the founding of heathenism, which had been cherished and nourished by the Church of Rome, and by her clothed in the garment of sanctity. November 19th, 1894. King Ahab set up Sunday worship. And we do see that coming. So skipping over chapter 16:34 to 1 Kings 17:1. And Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, "As the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, according to my word." So how many years was it? Do you recall? So we go over here to Luke 4:25. He says, "But I tell you the truth, many widows were in Israel in the days of Elias, when the heavens were shut up 3 years and 6 months, when the great famine throughout all the land." So that's 3.5 years. And here's the second witness to it in James 5:17. Now notice Elijah and Elias. They just changed the names. They're still the same person. Elias was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. So same thing. So this is the beginning of the 3.5 year period between the universal Sunday law and the probation of and the close of probation. And I've read this before, Malachi 4:5. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. So let's keep it in mind what Malachi said. God told Daniel in Daniel 12, he says, "For thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days," meaning these prophecies will be understood at the end of the time, not in 1798, but much later. No, what have we got here?
So that number keeps coming up, 3.5 years.
Oh, yeah, I do it. Yeah, 3.5 years. The message of the Lord came to Elijah to go to Ahab with the denunciation of his judgments because of the sins of Israel. Elijah traveled day and night until he reached the palace of Ahab. He solicited no admission, and he waited not to be formally announced. All unexpected to Ahab, Elijah stands before the astonished king of Samaria in the coarse garment usually worn by the prophets. He makes no apology for his abrupt appearance without invitation, but rising his hand to heaven, he solemnly affirms by the living God, who made the heavens and the earth, the judgment which would come upon Israel. There shall not be dew nor rain these years, according to my word. So verse 2 and 3. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, Get thee hence, and turn thee eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith that is before Jordan. So it looks to me like on this map that Elijah had to go about 50 or 60 miles on foot from Samaria to the brook Cherith. In essence, God is telling Elijah to get out of the large cities of Samaria and go to the smaller ones. And it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. So your bread and water will be sure. And it came to pass that while the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land, and the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, in verse 9, Get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee. So from the brook Cherith to Zarephath, it looks like it had to travel about 90 miles on foot. Now verse 10. So he arose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, the widow woman was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and says, Fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel that I may drink. And she was going to fetch it, and he called her, and he says, Bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thy hand. So the widow of Zarephath shared her morsel with Elijah, and in return her life and that of her sons were preserved. And to all whom in the time of trial and want gave sympathy and assistance to others more needy, God has promised great blessings, that God, who cared for Elijah in the time of famine, he would not pass by one of his self-sacrificing children. He who has numbered the hairs of their head will care for them. And in the days of famine, they will be satisfied, while the wicked are perishing all around from the want of bread. Their bread and water shall be sure. This is out of Conflict and Courage, page 206.
So I don't think we should bypass what has happened here. Here, God has provided for his servant through an unexpected heathen, or what looked like a heathen source. So God's hand is never too short to save. And we don't know how he's going to provide, but sometimes it's a very unexpected way. And this is the God that we can all serve. A God that will always have your back, and even in the most dire situations.
So I think it's in Prophets and Kings, we're told that that woman at Zarephath believed in the God of heaven. She wasn't a heathen.
That's right.
But she wasn't a Jew.
But she was in a heathen land, so there was no way he would have known.
Land, but the point point is that she was a believer.
That's right. So we
But
just,
Elijah didn't know that till he met her.
exactly.
He just went there because God
It
directed
was a
him to
completely
See,
unexpected source. And the same thing happened with Jesus. His parents had to escape to Egypt.
And-
That was an unexpected source of protection.
I like to think of what happened in the mind of the widow of Zarephath.
Mm-hmm.
She told Elijah, she said, I only have enough to make bread for me and my son. But she obeyed God, and he blessed. And so it must have been, she had a strong faith, but there was that little bit of wavering. It's like, what am I going to do if I make bread for the prophet first? Then what am I going to eat? We all have those thoughts. It's like, this is my last dollar. How am I going to manage, you know?
well, I'm going to tell a story on myself. It's there's been the neighbors has been stealing from me for the last 2 years, and so far they've taken over probably $4,000 or $5,000 worth of stuff. And so I made it my mind. And he was in the house. He got a gun. He took he found a rifle and took that, and then he took the last case I had to carry my computer in. And so I I'm going to get a gun. I'm going to kill that guy. And so I went down to buy a gun.
It was causing
And
your
I-
blood pressure to go up.
Yeah, way over.
No doubt it was.
Yeah. And so,
I'm so mad I'm gonna kill a guy.
yeah. And you know, I got halfway down to the store, and the word came to me, thou shalt not kill.
Yes, exactly. It's one of those.
I turned around and went back home. So instead of that, I went and bought some deadbolt.
Oh, you should have bought like a paintball gun or something. So next time you can't use.
Yeah, identify him.
His
Yeah.
blood pressure's been down ever since he turned it all over to
Yeah.
me.
Gotta do it.
Yeah, it's been up over 180.
Have a paint bucket dump on him.
Yeah.
like,
But then I'm going to have to clean the
big-
mess up.
set 'em up or something.
Well, at least he'll be caught red-handed or like pink-handed or whatever paint is.
Okay, let's get back here. Okay, verse 12. And she says, as the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering how many sticks?
Two.
She's gathering 2 sticks, and we're going to see there's symbolism there. That I may go in and dress it for thy son, that we may eat and die. So there's a prophecy here in verse 12. Do you see it? The gathering 2 sticks, having their last supper, and the son will die. This is a prophecy of the crucifixion hidden within the story. Now the story conviction. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Her son may die. Gather 2 sticks. You make a cross out of 2 sticks.
Mm-hmm.
That we may go in and dress it, the last supper, that we may eat it and die. So that goes right along with Revelation 12:14:4. And Elijah said unto her, fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me therefore a little cake first, and bring it unto me after make for thee and for thy sons. Though this has to be one of the greatest tests, to give up your last bite of food for a stranger. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord sends rain upon the earth. And the barrel of meal...
Elijah didn't argue with her or yell at her or anything. He encouraged her.
And the barrel of meal wasted not, neither did the cruse of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by Elijah. Now this is a comparison of Jesus' crucifixion in Revelation chapter 12. And it came to pass, now I'm going to spend a little time on this, and it came to pass that after these things, that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick, and his sickness was sore, and that there was no breath left in him.
This is a different story, right?
Yeah, it is. But this is a woman of Zarephath. So this here represents the crucifixion. He died. And Elijah took the child and brought him down out of the chambers unto the house, and he delivered him unto his mother. And Elijah says, See, thy son liveth. Okay. So when you come into Revelation 12, 1 through 5, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman, that's a church, and she is Mary, the mother, being with child, with Jesus. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to devour her child. That's a crucifixion. And the child was caught up to God in the throne. So this is the second witness to 1 Kings 17. I'm not covering it very well, but if you look at it, it's there. So in Revelation 12:17, the dragon was wroth with the woman. So the woman up here, this is a church, and went to make war with the remnant of her seeds, which keeps the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. So this woman, a church who keeps the commandments of God and has a prophet like Elijah, and she is a woman. And the she is Mary, but the woman is the church. And it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go, show thyself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. Do you remember how many years it was?
3.5.
3.5. Good. So I saw that many were neglecting the preparation so needful, and were looking for the time of refreshing and the latter rain to fit them to stand in the days of the Lord and to live in his sight. Oh, how many I saw in the time of trouble without a shelter. They had neglected the needful preparation, therefore they could not receive the refreshing that all must have to fit them to live in the sight of a holy God. Maranatha, page 254. Those who refuse to be hewed by the prophets and fail to purify their souls in obeying the whole truth, and who are willing to believe that their condition is far better than it really is, will come up to the time of the falling of the plagues, and then see that they need to be hewed and squared for the building. I recommend 2 books, Maranatha, this one here, and the Last Day Events. They cover just about everything we need. Okay. And it was about to pass when Ahab saw Elijah that Ahab said unto him, Art thou he that troubleth of Israel? Well, here the wicked king is blaming those who are keeping the commandments of God for the problems of the nation. And Elijah answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of God, and thou hast followed Balaam. It will be declared that men are offending God by the violation of the Sunday Sabbath, that this sin has brought calamities which will not cease until Sunday observance shall be strictly enforced, and that those who present the claims of the 4th commandment, thus destroying the reverence for Sunday, are troublers of the people, preventing their restoration to divine favor and temporal prosperity. Thus the accusation urged of old against the servant of God will be repeated, and upon grounds equally well established. And it came to pass, when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, Art thou he that troubleth Israel? And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Balaam. And as the wrath of the people shall be excited by the false charges, they will pursue a course towards God's ambassadors, very similar to that which the apostate Israel pursued towards Elijah. So verse 19. Now therefore send and gather to me all Israel unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the grove 400, that which eat at Jezebel's table. So that makes 850 prophets altogether. And this Armageddon means mountain and valley. Mount Carmel is just above the valley of Megiddo. So Ahab went into the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together. And so Ahab sent unto the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together unto Mount Carmel.
that's an interesting comparison. He went out to the children of Israel, but he was gathering the prophets of Baal.
Yeah, everybody get together. And Elijah came unto the people and says, How halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. And let them therefore give us 2 bullocks, and let them choose 1 bullock for themselves, and cut it in pieces, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under, and I will dress the other bullock. This was a test to reveal the true prophet of God and the loyalty of his people. And ye call upon the name of your God, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. The God that answers by fire, let him be God. And all the people answered and says, It is well spoken. And Elijah said unto the prophets of Baal, Choose you 1 bullock for yourselves, and dress it first, for ye are many, and called on the name of your God, and put no fire under. So the prophets and the people of Baal are the Sunday keepers. Isn't that what we read in earlier in the Baal worship Sunday?
Yep.
Okay. And they took the bullock which was given them, and they dressed it and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice nor any answer. And they leaped. This is funny. And they leaped upon the altar which was made. So many years ago, I lived in a small city where there was a Pentecostal church about 2 blocks away. And every time I read this verse, I get a flashback. So one summer day, I went by there. The doors were open, and they were screaming and rolling on the floor.
Whoa.
And some were standing on the chairs, waving their hands. Oh, it was a carnival. And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, Cry aloud, for he is a God. Either he's talking, or he is pursuing, or he's in a journey, or peradventure he sleepeth, and he must be awakened. Oops. And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their manner with knives and latches, till the blood gushed out upon them. And then here's another. This is another group which does not represent all Muslims, which we don't want to follow. Yeah, that's something. And it came to pass when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that there was neither voice nor answer, or any to answer, nor any that regarded. And Elijah said unto the people, Come near unto me. And all the people came near unto him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord that was broken down. And Elijah took 12 stones, according to the numbers of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, unto whom the words of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be thy name. So who is Israel? So maybe I got it here. No, I didn't. So Israel, if you look at Genesis chapter 32 and 28, Israel is not the little country in the Middle East. Israel are those who wrestle with God and have prevailed. Genesis 32:28. So Elijah, and with stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he made a trench about the altar as great as would contain 2 measures of seed. And he put the wood in order, and cut the bullock in pieces, and laid him on the wood, and says, Fill 4 barrels with water, and pour it onto the burnt sacrifice, on the burnt sacrifice, and on the wood. Pour it on the burnt sacrifice and on the wood. Okay. And says, Do it the second time. And they did it the second time. And they do it the third time. And they did it the third time. And the water ran about the altar, and he filled the trenches also with water. So this is a contest between 2 gods. First, it identifies which God he is praying to. Then God performs his miracle after the simple worship service. And it came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice that Elijah the prophet came near and says, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that thou art the God of Israel, and that I am thy servant, and that I have done all these things at thy word. Nothing is gained by cowardness or fearing to let it be known that we are God's commandment-keeping people. Hiding our light as if ashamed of our faith will result only in disaster. Conflict and Courage, 209. Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that thou art the Lord God, and that thou hast turned their back again. After the victim was laid upon the altar, he commanded the people to flood with water the sacrifice and the altar, and fill the trench round about the altar. Elijah then reverently bows before the unseen God, raises his hand towards heaven, and offers a calm and simple prayer. Unattended, without violent gestures or contortions of the body, no shrieks resounded over the Carmel's height. A simple silence, which is oppressive to the priest of Baal, rests upon all of them. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water in the trench. And I read an article in Signs of the Time where up on Mount Carmel, the people down below could see the brilliant light and all the fire. It showed up for quite a ways. And he doth great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. So here in Revelation 13, Satan is counterfeiting what God did with Elijah on Mount Carmel. And when the people saw it, they fell on their face, and they says, "The Lord is God, he is a God. The Lord is God, he is God." And Elijah said unto them, "Take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape." And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slew them there. So they were probably so tired they couldn't resist after jumping and having a day of excitement like that. They were probably so tired they couldn't resist. And Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he cast himself down upon the earth and put his face between his knees. And so you can imagine the pain that this would cause. And he says to his servant, "Go up now, look towards the sea." And he went up and he looked, and he says, "There's nothing." And he says, "Go again 7 times. So Nahum the Syrian was told to dip 7 times in the river Jordan. And it came to pass at the end of the 7th time that he says, "Behold, there arises a little cloud like this, a little cloud out of the sea, like a man's hand." So like the young ruler in Matthew 19:16, corresponding with World War I in 1916, and the doom pronounced on the Jerusalem in 1942 to 44, corresponding with the years 1942 to 44 during World War II in Hitler Germany. The Jews that were slaughtered by the millions. In 1 Kings 18:44, there is seen a little cloud rising out of the sea like a man's hand. And in the year 1844, there was a Baptist minister called William Miller, and the Millerites in northeastern part of the United States, who from the study of the Bible determined that 1844 we would see like the little ruler. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because a lot of things that happen is not what people expect. But we know it's going to be, well, you're going to have to grow a garden to sustain your own self. Like Sister White says, we need to grow enough to sustain ourselves for at least a year. Yeah. So in 1 Kings 18:44, they're seeing a cloud arising out of the sea like a man's hand. In the year 1844, there's a Baptist minister, William Miller, and the Millerites in the northeastern part of the United States, who from the study of the Bible determined that in 1844, like we see up here, wherever it is, see in 1844, 1 Kings 1844, I believe God put that in here as a date. So a little cloud about the size of a man's hand with the Son of Man sitting on it, in 1844 was not the coming of the Son of Man, but through, as they thought, but was the beginning of the judgment of the dead. But the judgment fell on the priest that day, the 800 of them. And it came to pass on the seventh time that he says, Behold, there arises a little cloud out of the sea, like a man's hand, and says, Go up and say to Ahab, Prepare thy chariots, and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. Verse 45. I really like this picture. This is a beautiful artist here. And you can see it. You're just enjoying the rain. And it came to pass that when in the meanwhile that the heavens was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain, and Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. This is the latter rain in the end of the 3.5 year, representing the physical and spiritual rain. Near the close of verse Harvard, a special bestowal of the spiritual grace is promised to prepare the church for the coming of the Son of Man. This outpouring of the Spirit is likened to the falling of the latter rain. Before the final visitation of God's judgment upon the earth, there will be among the people of the Lord such a revival of primitive godliness has not been witnessed since apostolic time. The Spirit and power of God will be poured out upon His children. And at the time of the latter rain, or the refreshing from the presence of the Lord, will come to give power to the loud voice of the third angel and prepare the saints to stand in the period when the 7 last plagues are poured out. I heard those clothed with their armor speak forth the truth with great power. It had effect. I asked what had made this great change, and the angel answered, says, It is the latter rain, the refreshing from the presence of the Lord, the loud cry of the third angels. So they put it clothed with the armor. That's in Ephesians 6:11. Put on the whole army of God. And this is the order: the armor, then the latter rain, and then the loud cry. 1 Kings 18, 46. And the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girt up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. So,
He was faster than horses.
What's that?
He was faster than horses.
Yeah, God gave him power to do it. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. So keep this in mind. This is at the end of the 3.5 years, and the death decree and the latter rain. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow at this time. This is a death decree. And as Ahab told the queen of the slaying of the idolatrous prophets, Jezebel, hardened and impenitent, became infuriated. She refused to recognize in the events on Carmel the overruling providence of God, and still defiant, she boldly declared that Elijah should die. So in Revelation 2, verse 20, notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou suffered that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed unto idols. So Jezebel appears again in Revelation, representing the Church of Rome. A decree was finally issued against those who hallow the Sabbath of the fourth commandment, denouncing them as deserving of the severest punishment, and giving the people liberty after a certain time to put them to death. Romanism in the Old World and the apostate Protestantism in the New will pursue a similar course towards those who honor all the divine precepts. The people of God will be plunged into those scenes of affliction and distress described by the prophet as the time of Jacob's trouble. When I first came into the church, I read something that as the time gets closer to the end, there's going to be a lot of people going to be dropping out because of severity. but just hang on and it'll take you through. And Elijah saw that he arose and he went for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there. So this is he went to Beersheba. Now this is about 30 miles scale. It looks like it'd be a little over 100 miles that Elijah went on foot. So in the time not far distance when like the early disciples, we shall be forced to seek a refuge in desolate and solitary places. As the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was a signal for the flight to the Judean Christians, so the assumption of power on the part of our nation in the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath will be a warning to us. It will then be time to leave the large cities and preparatory to leaving the smaller ones for retirement homes in secluded places among the mountains. And I see you guys are doing that just fine up here. And Elijah himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and he came and sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die, and says, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers." So depression is set in. And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, an angel touched him and said unto him, "Arise and eat." The God who cared for Elijah at the time of famine will not pass by his self-sacrificing children. He who numbered the hairs of their head will care for them, and in the days of famine they will be satisfied. While the wicked are perishing and all around them for want of bread, their bread and water shall be sure. So whose bread and water will be sure? It's his self-sacrificing children. Verse 6 and 7. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baken on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drank and lay down again. So verse 7. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time and touched him and says, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great." The Lord has shown me repeatedly that it is contrary to the Bible to make any provision for our temporal want in the time of trouble. I saw that if the saints had food laid up by them or in the field at the time of trouble, when the sword, famine, and pestilence are in the land, it would be taken from them by violent hands, and strangers would reap their fields. Then will be the time for us to trust wholly in God, and he will sustain us. I saw that our bread and water will be sure at that time, and that we shall not lack or suffer hunger. For God is able to separate a table, or to spread a table for us in the wilderness. If necessary, he would send ravens to feed, as he did to feed Elijah, or rain manna from heaven, as he did for the Israelites. So we not only need the faith of Jesus, we will also need the faith of Elijah as well. Verse 8. And he rose and he did eat and drink, and he went in his strength of the meat that 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, of the Mount of God. So 40 days is a part of the 45 days in Daniel 12. The whole congregation of Israel now encamped in the plains of full view of Mount Horeb. So Mount Horeb and Mount Sinai is the same place. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes and be ready against the third day. For the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. The people were required to refrain from worldly cares and to cultivate devotional thoughts, to put away their sins, to be free from all personal uncleanliness, and to cherish an abiding sense of holiness of God, whose voice they were soon to hear. So 40 days from Mount Carmel to Mount Sinai, which is a distance of about 360 miles. That's about 9 miles a day on foot for 40 days in a row. Today, Moses orders people Today, most older people have trouble getting across the street, let alone 360 miles. And he came to thither unto a cave, and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, and he said unto them, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he says, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down their altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and seek thy life, to take it away. And he says, Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind the earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a still small voice. The voice shakes the heaven and the earth. There is a mighty earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth. So mighty an earthquake and so great, the firmaments appeared to open and shut. The glory from the throne of God seemed flashing through. The mountains shake like a reed in the wind, and ragged rocks are scattered on every side. Graves are opened, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. All who have died in the faith of the third angel's message come forth from the tomb, glorified to hear God's covenant of peace with those who have kept his law. That's quoting Daniel 12:1 and 2. This is where the people of God are resurrected and are caught up to God, just as Elijah was caught to heaven. And it came to pass, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, and the horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. So Elijah's experience of being taken alive is going to be the resurrection of the saints at the end.
No.
So here's the summary in the second coming.
No, not the resurrection. The translation.
Yeah, it's a resurrection and the translation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now Joyce and I, we stood up at the change of the century at midnight on January 1st, 2000. We were standing up here on this hill somewhere, and everybody was up there. They had cameras. They were going to see Jesus come flying into Jerusalem. Of course, that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And he gathered them together in the place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. So on Mount Carmel, the brook dried up. Oh, come on. And the brook dried up because there had been no rain. In Babylon, Isaiah 45, 1 and 2, I will open the two leaf gates, and the channel of the river had been turned aside. So we're seeing what happens with the water. The destruction came upon Babylon while the kings and his lords were engaged in feasting and revelry. Cyrus and his army marched up the riverbed, the river Euphrates, in Armageddon, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the waters thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. So the kings of the east are the armies of heaven, not Russia and China. Upon Mount Carmel, and Elijah said unto them, Take the prophets of Baal, and let not one of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon, and slew them there. And the Moabites saw that the waters on the other side as red as blood, and they says, This is the blood of the kings are surely slain, and they are smitten at one another. And Babylon, in Daniel 5:30, in that night Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldean, was slain. Armageddon, and the slain of the Lord shall be at that day from one end of the earth even to the other end of the earth. They shall not be lamented, neither gathered nor buried. They shall be dung upon the ground. and in Revelation 14:20, and the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horses' bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. I don't know how long that is, but it's got to be quite a ways. Upon Mount Carmel, and it came to pass when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, Art thou he that troubleth Israel? And Elijah answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of God, and now hast followed Balaam. So if you're not keeping the commandments of God, you're following Balaam, is what it's saying. And Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? And Armageddon, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast in his image, and receive the mark on his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of God. And they have no rest day nor night, whoso worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. So it says, whoso worship the mark of his name, to receive the mark of his name. Now here's the remedy for not receiving the mark of the beast in verse 12. Here's the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. So these guys in verse 11 who worship the beast in his image and receive the mark of his name. So on Mount Carmel in 1844, it came to pass at the seventh time that he says, Behold, there arise a little cloud out of the sea like a man's hand, Babylon. And in the same hour came forth a finger of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Armageddon. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like the Son of Man, having on his head a gold crown, and in his right hand a sharp sickle. Armageddon. Soon our eyes were drawn into the east. A small black cloud had appeared, about half as large as a man's hand, which we all knew was the sign of the Son of Man. We all in solemn silence gazed on the cloud as it drew near, lighter and brighter, glorious and still more glorious, till it was a great white cloud. The bottom appeared like fire, and a rainbow was over all of it. And around the cloud were 10,000 angels singing a most lovely song. And on it sat the Son of Man. On his head were the crowns. His hair was white and curly, and lay on his shoulders. His feet had the appearance of fire. In his right hand was a sharp sickle, and in his left a silver trumpet. Okay, Armageddon. The child of God will be terror-stricken at the first sight of the majesty of Jesus Christ. He feels that he cannot live in his holy presence. But the word came to him as to John, Fear not. Jesus laid his right hand upon John. He raised him up from his prostrate position. So will he do unto his loyal, trusting ones. His eyes were as a flame of fire, which searched his children through and through. Then all faces gathered paleness, and those that God had rejected gathered blackness. The earth trembled before him. It says right here, and blackness, paleness was on those that the face gathered. Those that God had rejected. But if you see, it says Matthew 22:14, Jesus is a judgment, and it's not the pastor or the priest of the church, but when you're either rejected or you're accepted. So the earth trembled before him. The heavens departed as a scroll when it was rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, every bondman, every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountain. Maranatha 289. Thick clouds still covered the sky, yet the sun now and then breaks through, appearing like the avenging eye of Jehovah. Fierce lightning leaps from the heavens, enveloping the earth in a sheet of flames above. The terrific roar of thunder, voices mysterious and awful, declaring the doom of the wicked. The words spoken are not comprehended by all, but they are distinctly understood by the false teachers, those who a little before were so reckless, so boasting and defiant, so exultant in their cruelty to God's commandment-keeping people, are now overwhelmed with consternation and shuddering in fear. Their wails are heard above the sounds of the elements. Demons acknowledge the deity of Christ and trembling before his power, while men are supplicating for mercy and groving in abject terror. While these words of holy trust ascend to God, the clouds sweep back, and the starry heavens are seen, unspeakable, glorious, in contrast with the black and angry firmament on either side. The glory of the celestial city streams from the gates ajar. Then appears against the sky a hand holding 2 tables of stone folded together. Says the prophet, "The heavens shall declare the righteousness, for God is judge himself," in Psalm 60. That amid thunder and flames was proclaimed from Sinai as the guide of life is now revealed to men as the rule of judgment. The hand opens the tables, and there is seen the precepts of the Decalogue traced with the pins of fire. The words are so plain that all can read them. Memory is aroused. The darkness of superstition and heresy is swept from every mind, and God's 10 words, brief, comprehensive, and authoritative, are presented to the view of all the inhabitants of the earth. No secret rapture. And that great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And every island fled away, and mountains were not found. Well, I kind of wonder if that's going to happen to Hawaii and a lot of some of the South Pacific islands. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent, and men blasphemed God because of the plague of hail, for the plague thereof was exceeding great. So now a second summary. So this comes out of Revelation 14, the 3 angels' message. So in Armageddon, the 3 angels' message, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, kindred, and tongue, and people. And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And here is the patience of the saints. Here are they which keep the commandments of God in the faith of Jesus. I think we're about done. And verse 14. A white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like the Son of Man. And blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse's bridle, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. And the 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the waters thereof was dried up. And he gathered them together in the place called Armageddon in the Hebrew tongue. He gathered them together in a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent. And then the second coming. The end and the beginning. And that's it.
Interesting.